Welcome back, everyone, to the A24 on the Rocks podcast, my favorite podcast to listen to five people talk about A24 movies in order, and I just happen to be a co-host on here. We also drink adult beverages. This episode's going to be about Green Room, and I hope you've seen it before you continue listening, because there will be many spoilers ahead. I'm Kelly, I'll be the host of this episode, and tonight I am drinking a Topo Chico hard seltzer. After me comes my husband.
Hi, I'm Eric. I am also drinking the Topo Chico hard seltzer exotic pineapple because this is the drink I'm going to drink on the desert island I'm going to be abandoned on listening to my favorite band. Up next, we have Kevin.
Good evening, world. My name is Kevin K. Konachek, and tonight I am drinking a Michter's Single Barrel Straight Kentucky Rye Whiskey because I'm back on the sauce, and I certainly enjoy a good rye, and Michter's is one of my favorites. So, yeah, happy to be back.
Hello, world. This is Cole William Whitlaw Gibson. Tonight I am drinking an American rye whiskey from Sagamore Spirits, located in Baltimore. Pretty delicious, real strong. Up next, we got my boy Blaze.
Hey, what up, guys? It's Blaze Fitzgerald Ryan, but tonight you can just call me Odin. Just like this movie subverts expectations, you would think this would be the perfect episode for me to drink a PBR. But no, tonight I am drinking Florida Man, the Double Pale Ale by Cigar City, a little brewery down here in Tampa. Pinky's out, bitches.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Appropriate.
A24 on the rocks.
Cole, I'm sorry I didn't introduce you.
Okay, it's okay, Kevin. You know what? Sometimes you just get used to being forgotten.
Oh, no.
With this drama behind us, we're going to talk about a movie called Green Room. As Blaze kind of already hinted at, it's a story that maybe will subvert your expectations. I know that's a theme that I plan on us touching on tonight. This movie, if you don't know, is from 2015. It's a thriller horror about a punk rock band that is forced to fight for survival after witnessing a murder at a neo-Nazi skinhead bar. If that doesn't pique your interest right from the get-go, I don't know what's wrong with you, because that sounds like a hell of a movie to watch. I might be biased. We'll see how it goes as we continue listening. Movie is written and directed by Jeremy Saulnier. He came to fame in 2013 after making another movie that is a bit of a revenge story called Blue Ruin. Has anyone on here seen that movie?
It's amazing.
I saw the trailer.
I hear it's amazing. I was surprised.
It looked really good.
Having seen this one and hearing good things about that one, that he doesn't have a lot more under his belt. He has a Netflix movie called Hold the Dark that he directed but did not write. So I would like to see more from him just based off of what I'm hearing about him so far. There's a lot of actors in this movie that you may have heard of. One of them probably being the most star power is Patrick Stewart. We also have Imogen Poots, Anton Yelchin, and a cast of other characters, but I wanted to make sure we touched on those three.
Anton Yelchin, sorry. Before we get into this, Anton Yelchin.
Yelchin. They make up our main characters are a DC punk band called Ain't Rights, and the story takes place in the Pacific Northwest. I'm kind of seeing this movie as like 4 acts to it, but before I even start talking about how I kind of broke up this movie, I want to get, is this everybody's first time seeing it? Who was it your first time?
First time.
Second or third.
All right, first timers, we're going to start with Cole. What did you think this movie was going to be like? And without giving us entirely too much, what did it end up being like to you?
So I had heard that this was described to me as a weird horror movie. So I kind of went in with that kind of mindset. I knew it had dealt with a punk rock and neo-Nazis, and I thought that was kind of a cool concept. So I was pretty excited about this movie. I'd been wanting to see it for a while, and it's been on my my backlog for many years now. So I was very happy to see it, and at the end of it, it was definitely it did a lot of things and did a lot of things differently than I kind of expected, but I enjoyed it. It was good.
Kevin, same question to you.
So, for me, this movie kind of fits by some of the other big A24 titles that I had kind of heard of in passing without knowing anything about it, and certainly not being part of the film circle at all. So when we did get to it, I was anticipatory of it because it was kind of a name that I'd already heard. I watched the trailer ahead of time, and I kind of got an idea of what I was getting myself into. But at the end, it was a lot more smart than I thought I was getting myself into. It had a lot more A24 qualities coming out than I thought going into it. I honestly thought I was just kind of getting into a slash and hack thriller horror movie, run through the woods type of deal, and what we got was a lot more of a realistic portrayal of life and of people and of a very specific scene that maybe we don't a lot of get exposure to. So it was a big surprise for me coming out the end, and that's pretty much my take on it.
Yeah, no right answers, but I think both of you kind of walked right into my trap of what I was trying to ask you. Blaze, on your second watch, anything that you kind of caught or appreciated or didn't appreciate on this watch?
No, I remember it very vividly. I saw it during the pandemic. I remember that specifically because I listened to this YouTube channel called Red Letter Media, and they review a lot of movies that I might have flown under the radar had I not watched them, and they highly suggested it. And I mean, to say anything's like overtly different from my first time watching it, no, I don't think so. I think it's just as good as a movie. I do think it does a great job at, like Kevin said, the realism of the situations that people are put in, and then just the icky feeling that the director puts us in is something that I immediately grasped onto, to be honest.
And Eric, I'm going to throw it to you too. On this second watch, any kind of like themes that stood out to you more, or things you appreciated, or things that just different thoughts and feelings and expectations this time around?
Different themes? No, I don't think so. I think what I actually didn't notice before is that this was placed in the Pacific Northwest, and I liked the scenery at the start. That just kind of thought that just outside of, very liberal cities like Portland, there does hide these kind of working class alt-right countercultures that are just right outside of, big cities like Portland or even LA. This kind of secluded bunker / Nazi bar can just be, it could be down any road that you think of when you're driving in these rural areas somewhere. So, yeah.
Yeah, well said. I'm going to start talking about the band that we kind of follow throughout the movie. And I know, Eric, you've been in a band. Has anyone else on this podcast been in a band?
I have.
As well. What did you like or dislike about the way that these members of the band were kind of introduced, and the way that I think pretty early on we're shown a lot instead of told a lot about them and about the way that they work together? Kevin, do you want to kind of riff on what I'm laying down?
Absolutely. So the first scene that we get right off the bat is this wonderful shot scene of this cornfield and this van kind of sitting in there. And very quickly we come to find out that the driver was clearly maybe drunk and had crashed into the cornfield and passed out behind the wheel. And the band starts ripping on each other on whose fault it is, and it doesn't matter, we have to go get gas. And just like the interaction they had amongst themselves was, yeah, we pick on each other and we probably don't like each other sometimes, but we come together when we need to, and at this point we have to get some gas and get the situation done. So I thought that was pretty cool. I enjoyed kind of the quick introduction to everybody's character. We get the I'm going to be bad with actors all the way off the bat, so I'm going to go with maybe Funke this whole time as an Arrested Development reference. Help me with the actress's name, somebody.
Alia Shawkat?
Who is it? Yeah, thank you. Her playoff with Anton Yelchin.
Yelchin?
Yelchin, thank you. Was very obvious right off the bat. I just really enjoyed their kind of play. So to answer your original question, it felt like a band. It felt like a group of misfits that were kind of thrown into a situation and they had to get out of it. We see some interaction with them about how they go on to their next gig, talking about getting $6 to get paid in a Denny's. Those things, like, that's what you do when you're in a band. You look for any opportunity under the sun, you play for the music, and especially in a band that doesn't make any money, you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. So I thought that was very, very accurate, very real, and it certainly set up the rest of the film because it kind of gave you a camaraderie aspect. Like, these people are going to be together, so whatever happens to them is going to suck even more because they're close.
Yeah, Eric, you want to kind of weigh in on that too, that dichotomy of band life and relationships between the characters?
Yeah, like, so I was never in a punk band, but I definitely was, like, around punk bands in the Detroit scene, and that it definitely reminds me of some of the crusty punks that I'd be around, just going around siphoning gas and, probably sleeping on somebody's couch every night, and I really enjoyed how they had no social media presence, and it kind of reminds me, this band's probably not even close to as, famous as Parquet Courts, but Parquet Courts was a band that I really like. They're still around, and they have no social media presence, and that seems like a very punk thing to do. And yeah, I just kind of like the depiction of this very small indie punk band and how they are sticking to these kind of old rules of punk, the kind of old counterculture that was really established in 1970s punk and really like living the life of it. And, nowadays it's very hard to make a living or be famous in that, or have your band take off when you still stick to those rules, like no social media. But I like how devoted they were to the scene and the feel of punk.
Cole, I'm going to come over to you next. So they, pretty early on, were introduced to this fellow punk. You can tell because he has a mohawk, who's kind of hosting them and is going to interview them for a radio. Since you are someone who always points out your attention to detail, what were your thoughts on kind of how his home was set up and the way that they kind of introduced and gave us, not that we needed to know that much about the interviewer himself, but even the small details such as, please, park your car down a bit so no one goes through your stuff. Like, these kind of details that they added and kind of made him more of a real character, even though it's not like he was a shining star.
Yeah, I think the way that they developed even like a small character like him was very well done and felt very real life. Like, it didn't feel like a movie. It felt like just a bunch of punk rockers that are, going to give this guy an interview so they can crash at his pad and, drink his beer. I don't know. I thought it was a pretty cool start to the film, and I thought I really liked the scene where they were played in like a Denny's for the lunch, show or whatnot. Felt like very real and relatable to like just basic bands that are trying to make a buck. And then obviously the big tough guy had to show that he's a big tough guy that knows jiu-jitsu and stuff. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good way to start the film off and then lead them down a path that because I wanted to know how they got to this neo-Nazi camp. So it was interesting to see how they got there when they obviously weren't a part of that group. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was good writing.
I think, that is set up in a good way. Blaze, is someone who regularly siphons gas. Just kidding.
I only do it for the taste, okay? This is...
Yeah. Only one time.
Do you want to weigh in, Blaze, on what I'm calling, this is kind of our act one, just establishing everybody, showing the focus of obtaining money and how they end up in this bar that takes as the scene of most of this movie. Anything that you kind of want to weigh in as far as establishing shots and characters or anything else?
Yes. I first of all, what everyone else said was completely right and true and wonderful to hear through my ear holes. The thing that I liked most about the first part of this movie, and no one has touched on it yet, but Eric got close when they were doing the interview with the guy, when he was like, oh, you have no social media presence. So that was cool that they set up that, they won't be missed immediately by any of their fans. And then I believe it was Pat, or it might have been Tiger, they said something about music, about how it comes in fast and loud and aggressive and it just leaves. And if you look at the movie itself, how it's set up, they get into this Nazi camp and it gets loud real fast. And then in the last scene, it's basically complete silence. So it's the director telling us this is a movie that you have to experience, all the trials and tribulations, and you're going to feel a lot of emotions. Other than that, I thought the establishing shots were great. There was a lot of cool, shots of the van going, up and down, the little wee hills. The way that the movie opens with them in the cornfield or whatever. They can tell a story without telling you exactly what happened, and that's what makes... One word that I'm going to use a lot in this movie is authenticity, and it feels very authentic how everyone would act in every situation they're in. So I think Act 1 is all about how cool the authenticity of... These aren't movie characters. These are how real people would act.
Yeah, I like the way that you just said that, because I definitely felt with these characters at the start, not like I was watching actors, but I was really just kind of peering in on a band. So I'm saying basically the same thing you did, but I agree completely. I don't feel it, just authenticity 100%. So I would call this part of that movie Act 1, and it starts to shift over during what for me was my favorite scene the first time I watched it, and then loved it the second time too, when they get to the skinhead bar and they kind of catch the vibe right away. Their decision when they're going to go up and start their set is to play Nazi Punk's F Off by Dead Kennedys. And the bravery of this band to do that took my soul out of my body the first time that I watched this. And we have spitting in the crowd, we have screaming. It scared the heck out of me when I was watching it. And I think that's such a good way to get started into a thriller horror. So this scene for me is huge. And I just kind of wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on it. We don't have to have everybody weigh in, but I imagine it probably left an impact on all of you. Cole, let's start with you on this one.
I think the part that I loved the most about that whole scene would be, was obviously it was very dramatic, and people were throwing bottles and pissed, and it was funny because they started dancing to the music, and then all of a sudden they realized what they were singing, and a lot of people sort of died down. But the part that I loved the most was, we talk about how it subverted our expectation. When that happened, I was like, oh, so this is how the movie's going to go. This is where they're going to reach their, breaking point where it starts to get real spooky. Turns out, not the case. Went, a completely different direction that took me way off guard, which I loved. The fact that it, kind of threw in this almost like a secret Trojan horse with this song, and you're like, oh, shit, they're just going to get rushed, and then it's going to turn into a madhouse. But no, it did it. Surprisingly, the neo-Nazis were very tame during that scene, so I liked it a lot.
Kevin, we always talk about music with you. This is kind of the first time in the movie that actual punk rock gets blasted in your face.
Yeah.
And before that, it's a lot of atmospheric. I always use this term, but I call it planetarium music. And we had a lot of kind of that over the, overarching landscape shots and establishing shots. This is the first time you get blasted with, raw sound. And I imagine you have a pretty good sound kind of setup. So
yes.
Thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on that and the scene in general, so I'll try to keep this as brief as I possibly can. So the juxtaposition between those two things that you just mentioned, I have in my notes as being a very, very clear intent by our writer-director, clearly giving those long establishing shots with the trees, with that atmospheric music. I was reading an interview with a filmmaker, and they were talking about how it was kind of John Carpenter-esque with some of those long, very... established musical tones that kind of not really creep you out, but establish kind of a peaceful tone that truly breaks as soon as you get to this club, which was fantastic. There's a couple of the cool facts about the cast in general when it came to that scene. So Jeremy Saulnier, or however you pronounce his last name, it's horribly... I apologize, sir. But anyway, he initially gave them 4 tracks to listen to and memorize, and then he expected them to learn their instruments and basically perform that as if they were a live punk band performing it. So they meticulously had to practice and learn that, and they kind of felt like they became a band while they were going through that. So that's why that performance feels as raw and as tight as it does, is because they really go through the motions and take the time to kind of master what it would look like in that scenario. And when you're, an actor or actress and you have to put yourself in that mode, it's really important that you get it right. So that was really cool. You could see their effort. The choice to play F Off Nazi Punks is a punk choice, right? But we almost see our main character back out of it at the last minute. And then we kind of get some more play off of our two, main characters off of that. But the cinematography of that scene, I'm sure we'll get to it when we talk about the cinematography, but we get those slow motion shots of the guitar and bass moving up, of the mosh pit going around, and the freaking music just stops. And we get this silence and this over, and I'm just picturing it in my mind as I'm describing it. It was so good. It was brilliantly done, well choiced. That entire scene was awesome, and I'm rambling because I could talk about this forever because the music was just so good. But they really did a great job. So just points on for them. Just great job.
Yeah, ramble on. Feel free.
Yeah, right?
Blaze, do you want to touch on this kind of scene? I feel like everybody should have an opportunity to speak on it.
Oh, absolutely. So this is like one of the most brilliant scenes in the entire movie, in my opinion. And again, I'm going to quit going to this crutch of authenticity, but the way that, like, for example, in Barely Lethal, another movie that we reviewed, we had a lot. There were like questionable things that people did, and we called them plot holes. Now, playing fuck off Nazi punks in a Nazi bar is a pretty dumb move, we can all agree. But it was not out of character based on the characters that we had already, gotten to know over the first 20 minutes of the film. And then where Cole said, I'm surprised they didn't, rush the stage, when they were singing it and, beat the shit out of them. Well, because in real life, that's not how people work either. So, there was obviously the neo-Nazis that were pissed off, and they were spitting on the ground and giving them death stares, but, this wasn't the time or the place to, exact revenge. So, again, the cinematography was beautiful. I loved the way that the punk music, faded into, this almost, classical music when they did the slow motion part. And, it's just a great way to set up the scene that they're in, the type of people that they are, and the type of people that they're dealing with. So again, it was a brilliant scene in the way that everything's set up and worked together. So I commends to everyone involved in that scene.
Last but not least.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to that radio interview, and I'll tie it back to this, but what they say when they talk about their no social media presence, Pat says, no one wants to starve, but if you take it all virtual, you lose the texture. And then the radio interviewer asks, what do you mean texture? And then Pat's like, you got to be there. The music is for the effect, it's time and aggression. And then Reese comes in and says, it's technical wizardry. Tiger later that scene also says, I won't live to be 70, but we won't touch on that yet. A little foreshadowing there. But yeah, that's what you could feel, the texture in the scene. When the music dropped out and you just saw, just the whole room and everything, you felt the texture of punk, and you felt the time and aggression. You don't need to even hear the music to see all these people moshing, and you see, the time and aggression of a live performance, And, yeah, it's just something that's, almost kind of lost these days, is these, small punk... I mean, Nazi bars, that sucks, but, small punk bars, though, they're not, not as big anymore, and seeing that kind of scene recreated is kind of cool.
Jeremy Saulnier had a bunch of experience growing up in the punk scene in the Pacific Northwest. I think it was the Pacific Northwest. Anyway, he's got a ton of experience, which is why that scene felt as realistic as it did, because he has seen that bar probably 1,000 times and was able to recreate it. And that was kind of something that was kind of a passion project for him. So we kind of were able to see that clearly come through on the screen.
Something that he said, and I wrote down the quote, was that he wanted this movie to stand the test of real musicians scrutinizing every frame. I think that even right away, he does a great job. So I'm glad that you touched on that, Kevin.
Yeah.
Something I liked after Eric and I watched this movie together the first time is that we went through a Dead Kennedys phase. So that was a highlight for me.
And did you see that she was wearing the Dead Kennedys shirt that apparently they picked up at a thrift shop, which was pretty cool?
Yes. So after this, as we're entering into Act 2, murder is discovered, and I know I need to start pacing up kind of the story, and we're not going to go through everything, but there's a lot that goes on. You're introduced to the band that goes on after them, and they are black metal, socialist, or national socialist. Black metal is what they're... Yeah. They're scary. We've got the scariest guy, Worm, who has done the crime, and they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. You think that our punk band that we're following, like Cole kind of said, is going to get rushed by them, but actually it's they witnessed something that they shouldn't. And then we're kind of introduced to this neo-Nazi group almost in tears. This guy's going to run the charge on how we're going to handle this situation to start with, but he kind of answers to this other guy, and then they all answer to Patrick Stewart. So I know we're going over a lot, but Cole, I want to hear from you first on this as well. Patrick Stewart's introduced. What were your thoughts on seeing not only him, and I'm sure for me he's Professor Xavier, to see him play a role like this was quite different, and the way that his character handles the situation.
Yeah, I knew he was in this movie, and I was waiting for him to show up. And when he showed up, I was just like, fuck yeah, it's Patrick Stewart. It is, Professor X and all this other, and Star Trek and stuff. I think like this is a role that I've never seen him even close to portraying in any film, but I think he absolutely nailed it. He kind of nails that line of everyone reports to him. He is in control of everything. He's like the mastermind, the leader of this whole conglomerate, but he also has that very kind of almost calm and cool and collected, but to like kind of a scary level where he's just, when he does raise his voice, it's very quickly, and then it goes right back down to just being calm and cool. And he did a phenomenal job. I really absolutely loved his character. As much as you can love a neo-Nazi, but like he crushed it, which I think we all knew he was going to crush it. But just all those interactions of where you don't even see him, and it's just his voice on the other side of that door. I mean, just awesome. He did such a good job.
Not to jump into the negotiation scene that happens between that door, but I'm gonna do that. Eric, what were your kind of thoughts on Patrick Stewart, not only with his presence, but the way that this movie establishes the hierarchy of who answers to who handles the situation, what way, and then the way that this negotiation is handled? I know it's a lot of questions, but...
Yeah, did you write them down?
It made a lot of sense, because in the end, they're basically just a gang, and usually you have like the gang leader that kind of slowly brings people more into the fold and tries to corrupt them, and that you start people out with smaller tasks, and then you amp up how much violence they can do, and also everybody obviously answers to him, because the gang leader obviously also is the one. It's like a pyramid scheme. They end up with the most money in the end. And so it just all made sense. He would be the one that would have to come there and do the negotiations with this band. And you know that he has ulterior motives when he's talking to them. And there's such a good drama intensity to that scene, because you can tell how much is kind of going on under the surface with Darcy Banker, played by Patrick Stewart. You can tell this man has a lot of things up his sleeve, for sure.
Blaze, there's some other characters in these scenes. We have Gabe, who, for me, I kind of thought he was like the bar manager. He's the guy who initially is like, just everybody calm down. We have Big Justin with his gun, and it's not full of bullets, so just get these words straight. And Clark, who I'm just calling Dog Guy. Out of these characters, oh, and one more, Amber, who's Emojin Poots, who is also in the room with our band. Out of all of these characters, who do you want to touch on? Who did you gravitate towards? I hope you don't pick a skinhead, but, if the character's well written, you can talk about it.
I thought that all four people that you named, I thought they all brought their own uniqueness to the story. I'm not going to remember these people's names because they weren't really said that much. But the bar manager guy, he really seemed like his whole life was wrong place, wrong time. And he really just seemed like the middleman in what I would call a neo-Nazi hierarchy. Like, he did not want to be there. Towards the end, he may or may not have a change of heart. Big John, he was kind of actually funny the way that he, interacted with the characters. He was definitely a true threat, but the way that he interacted with the characters, especially at first, we're not holding here, you just have to stay here. He was kind of like a voice of authority, and I really wish he would have survived a lot longer than what he did. And then blonde punk girl who turns out to be their friend towards the end because Worm killed her friend. On this watch of the movie, she's like one of my favorite characters. She's so ruthless compared to the band. Like, she has seen some shit before, and again, this movie, I'm going to keep going back to it. Like, there's parts in this movie where other movies, they would spell it out for you. So the way that she comes off makes her feel like a genuine person, and the shit that she does, like cuts Big John's stomach, like right up the middle when they're choking him out, you know she's seen some shit before, you know she's done some shit before, and she does it with such ruthless abandon that you know her past without them explicitly telling you that she's a badass. So she was my favorite out of the four. But no, all of them brought something unique. And then Dog Guy was kind of cool too. But it seemed more about the dogs than the dog guy. But he was definitely his own special brand of psychopath.
But I am going to throw it over to Kevin now. We have this cast of characters that we're all talking about. Patrick Stewart's included among them. I know it's a lot that we're talking about, but give us some of your thoughts on this first go. Seeing this movie, introduced to all of these characters, who kind of stood out, what kind of pieces of the writing maybe stood out to you, leading questions. So please follow.
All of those things. All right, let's start with Sir Patrick Stewart, because I think that he's a very key point, obviously, as being the main bad guy. I was looking at some interviews, and he took this role mainly because of the strength of the script, but also because he truly was drawn to the idea of playing this bad guy. So I thought that was unique, too, that he wanted to play it because of the true ruthlessness of this character and the meticulousness of the way it's written. I really thought that it was very intentional to have all of the bad guys be so planned and so well written out versus the chaos of the punk band and the chaos of their decisions on the fly, just like we're going to run out and do whatever we want to do, or I'm going to give the gun, or just making these decisions because they have to, versus the planning of the way that Sir Patrick Stewart's character brought everything to the table. He was talking about halfway through the script he needed a tall glass of scotch because he was absolutely terrified while reading it. And I think it does come across that way when you're watching the film, that you really do feel that anxiety. I was talking with my wife about it, and my heart was racing from basically start to finish on this film. And that's a true testament to a lot of the character work that we do get to see. We touched on some of the bad guys and kind of how their work kind of played off of each other. The bar manager, man, I forget his name. It was he's actually a close personal Gabe. The actor himself is a close personal childhood friend of Jeremy Saulnier. He plays the main character in Blue Ruin. So if our listeners want to go back and check him out in that, he's the main protagonist there. But he did a great job, and he was complex in his own right. He didn't feel like he was totally on board with what they were doing. There's a big deal at the end of the movie where he kind of just walks off into the woods and goes and gets the cops. So his character is complex. Jeremy Renner goes on as saying is he wants every character, no matter how good or bad they are, to be flushed out in 3D. And he did a great job. We felt like even the skinheads themselves, Worm had a character aspect to him. Clearly, we have our main Nazis having character aspects to them. Even Daniel and the whole subplot about running away and trying to leave the Nazi life behind him, they all had characters. So like in a 90-minute film, we're able to take all of these different characters, quickly throw them in a huge pot, and get a super realistic, down-to-earth, crazy feeling movie, and it's all based on the strength of the writing, and particularly in the character work. So just fantastic job by our writer-director there. It made everybody just shine through across the board.
Well said. Eric,
Thanks.
for you, as a screenwriter yourself, at this point in the movie, we're about at the halfway or about to be coming to the halfway. Where should a movie be at this point? Did this movie accomplish it? What kind of feelings did you have? Because the pacing's going to change a little bit soon. So I wanted to know, while you're watching up to kind of this negotiation scene, up to when the arm is thrown out the door and a gun is taken and the violence starts happening, what were your feelings? How was the pacing? Thoughts on this?
The pacing was phenomenal. Like I felt like they truly introduced us to all the characters very well before we got into the action, and then when we get into the thriller / action aspect of the film, it definitely gives you a claustrophobic feeling, like, because they are kind of stuck in a room, and then they're stuck in a house in a way, and it's almost like a house of horrors with dogs running around and Nazis running around with machetes and everything. And the pacing was great because I think in the end this is a thriller, and when we start getting the action, it doesn't relent in a way. Like, there's small lulls, but not long enough to make you feel safe, and that was fantastic. And then I just, going into the introducing of the characters, I like how they fit. Each member of the band definitely fits the trope of the instrument they play. Like, Tiger knows jujitsu. He's the drummer, obviously. He's the badass that is, he'll kick ass and take names. Tiger is the singer, and he seems like he wants to be kind of like the most likable in a way. Like, during the radio interview, I felt almost kind of like that. But, he's like kind of the cool guy. And then Sam, the guitarist, she's the most outspoken of everyone in the band. And the bassist is, I feel like low-key, like the smartest of them all, and kind of the real talent, as all bassists are, because I'm a bassist. I loved the introduction to all these people, though. They definitely set the scene and pace it so well before they get into the action. And then when the action starts, you're in it, and the drama is high intensity and wonderful.
Blaze, did you want to touch on what Eric was saying? You were looking like you had some riffs.
Oh, I thought Reese was the jujitsu guy.
Reese's, yeah.
Reese, yeah, I thought did I not say that?
Tiger.
Oh, sorry,
Tiger.
Tiger's the singer. Reese is the drummer, who's the jiu-jitsu guy. Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
Tiger had green hair, so that was like one of the most obvious characters to remember their name.
Flip flop.
There's a lot of green in the green room.
Yeah.
Yes,
There was
there
not.
was a lot of green.
I'm looking
There
at
was
the
a lot of green in this
just
movie.
looking at the cast list, and I just mixed up the two. That's it.
Oh,
Okay.
all right.
That's okay.
Excused.
Cole, we're getting back on the rails. And
Let's do it.
we're talking about this part in the movie where the negotiation goes, okay, we'll give you a gun. And out goes this guy's arm, and when it returns, it looks like something else. So the violence begins, and it's shown on screen, and I wanted to know kind of your thoughts. It's always kind of important to contextualize how violence is used in a movie. Did you see this amount coming? We're talking about expectations as a thing as well.
Yeah.
So, how'd you feel?
So, like, at this point in the movie, I thought it was going to be like, okay, so this is going to be like kind of like a weird escape room type thing where, it's not going to be ultra violent. It's going to be a lot of just like tense negotiation as they're trying to escape. And then the gun thing happens where he sticks his arm out and he's like screaming. And I just thought that people were just like beating up his arm or hitting him with a baseball bat and trying to get the gun out of his hand. But when he pulls his arm back in and you like see his hand almost like completely cut off and the whole arm lacerated and stuff like that, I was like, holy, my reaction was just, holy fuck, this just got ratcheted up to 11. Like, Jesus, that was not what I was expecting. Like, It went from, Patrick Stewart's just out there like, we're trying to have a negotiation. I just don't want you to have a gun. I don't want anyone to get hurt. Stick your arm out, and then a bunch of kids with red shoelaces just fucking start going ham with a machete on your arm. And that was probably one of the scariest things about this movie, or like one of the, I guess, more brutal aspects of this film is, in a lot of horror movies, there's people getting shot and all that stuff, and some people do get shot in this movie. But, the thoughts of, them using the dogs to kill people and machetes and, like, I don't know, just the thought of, being hacked up with a machete is, like, way worse than just getting shot and dying, right? Like, super visceral and just pretty crazy. Kevin?
Kevin?
We get a line later in the movie where Sir Patrick Stewart, while he's talking to the Red Laces, he's basically like, if you're going to shoot once, and if you shoot more than one, shoot a cluster, because you're going to be digging out the slugs later.
Yep.
It just goes into the whole idea that he's so technical about keeping everything clean, and you could tell he's done this before. I mean, we get that scene where he pulls the bloody bat out of the trunk, and, like, it's very, we have to clean up because we're a bunch of Nazis, but it's just super technical the way they did it, and I just was appreciative of that.
Blaze?
So going off of what Cole said, where, like, it was a good horror movie aspect to it, in any other horror film, when that guy puts his hand out, he comes in and his arm's just a little like stub, right? It got cut clean off. In this movie, it's fucking mangled. Like, you can feel like the pain going through him. There's like a deep cut here. His pinky's half off, like, and he's screaming to high hell like any normal person would be. So I'm just saying the authenticity of it, because much like Cole, when I remember first watching this film, I thought it was going to be die-hard core punk. It turns out that it's a lot more violent than I thought I was going into, and that's where the vileness comes from. This movie is very good at being vile and showing really human debauchery, and that's where the horror comes through for me. Like, it's very thriller in the aspects of them trying to escape, and it's very thriller in the facts that, you know, they're up against a crime family. But the horror comes in the brutality of how they go through, and Kevin said the methodicalness of how these people operate. It would scare me, because if I was in the same situation, I'd be just as dumb as, you know, these guys. So that's where the real horror comes in for me.
I love it how we found a way to make the gore develop the character more, right? So he could have let go of the gun on the first slash, but he holds onto it for 4 or 5 different slashes. We even get the line where the drummer says, "You hold onto it longer than I would have." So in that gore moment, we still get the idea that he's trying to hold on to hope for his band and for his, you know, his life. And it's not just gore for the sake of gore. It's well placed. It's meticulously put in there. And he's going on record as saying this was full frontal gore. He's not walking away from it. He absolutely knows exactly what he's getting. I mean, like, clearly, right? The dog scene. I mean, you could go on and list the amount of scenes that we see that are just gratuitous, graphic violence, but they all make sense. And I think that's what the best part about it is.
Eric, these are...
Yeah, full frontal gore. Full frontal.
Director said, yep.
Yep.
Eric, these are all... These band members, they don't seem like they're prepared for this kind of life or death scenario, and they're going to make choices like real people would. Except for maybe Amber. She's, like we've kind of said, she's seen some things. I feel like when I was watching this, you can't really help but put yourself in their shoes. What would I do? What would I attempt? And then eventually we get to the point where they decide we're just going to go out the front door, or we're going to dig a hole in the ground because I see a little bit of light. What were your kind of thoughts on, did you find yourself sitting there, what would I do in this scenario? And did you like the choices that these characters made? And how did you feel when they decided to go out the door?
Yeah, well, I watched it with you, and I was telling you, I would not have just went out the front door all willy-nilly. Is it realistic? Yeah, because I feel like when you get that much adrenaline in that situation, you might not make the best decisions. Personally, I think when I saw the heroin, I would have been like, I have all your fucking heroin in here, and I will torch it all if you don't let me leave. And like, the second I saw the heroin, I'd be like, I have a lot of money with me right now. I'm going to hold this hostage. I'm going to do something with this. I'm going to, maybe, like, if I know for sure they're going to kill me, I'm just going to completely destroy all the heroin, because then a drug dealer is going to kill them for all the heroin they lost. So I think that's what I would have, maybe, like, if I was actually smart enough to do something in that situation, which I've never been in that situation, so I would never know. That's what I would have done. But yeah, going out the front door, not the smartest idea, but, like, I think in terms of the movie, it introduces even more action and more drama to the situation, and it definitely works, for sure.
Yeah, I would hide. I think, I mean, I know what I would do. I would hide as long as I could.
Yeah.
But the one character says the longer we wait in here, the more time they have to strategize out there, which I think raises a great point, and I'm glad that they kind of touched on the thought process behind something that I myself probably wouldn't do. Cole?
I just wanted to touch on Eric's thought about burning all the heroin. Big disappointment on my part of this film that didn't happen, because I felt like there was so much foreshadowing about the fire and the whole, because of the fire hazard and not blocking the hallway, and Patrick Stewart even called it out, and I was just like, this shit's gonna get burnt down, and never happens. Big disappointment. I was reading it all into the foreshadowing, and what a letdown.
It was an excuse to use the fire extinguisher as the main piece of defense.
I get why the fire, like, it was like all about to build up so that way they had a fire extinguisher, but I'm like, fuck, you know, you don't even have to build up. You know,
No,
you
I
hope
wrote it
there's
down
a
too,
fire,
Cole. I
fire
wrote
extinguisher.
foreshadowing for sure on the. I thought it was going to happen.
So, but I think it was you know, another case where he was like a fake Trojan horse. Same thing with the, you know, the Nazi song at the beginning. It's like, I'm gonna make you think something's gonna happen, and it's not gonna happen, and you're just gonna have to fucking deal with it. So.
But I think I was also saying when I was watching this, like, I would have done what Pat ended up doing at the end. I would have done the most chaotic thing possible and just, like, started slashing shit, making a bunch of noise. Because, like, if you started just throwing a wrench in their plans or just doing something completely nonsensical or chaotic, it might confuse them enough to where they don't know what the fuck's going on. And then that way you can try to get away. Maybe that's why I would do it, but... Yeah.
And I love it. We still get the super classic horror trope of let's split up.
Yeah.
Like, out of all of the awesomeness that we get and the realism for everything, he's still going to be like, let's split. You know, that's super classic. We see that in all of our favorite classic horrors. So, yeah.
Blaze, did you find yourself, like, rooting for one character over the others when all of these escape attempts start, and when Daniel joins the gang, you find out kind of what happened between him and Emily? Did you find yourself like, oh, I hope this person makes it to the end, or this person's making the choices that I would? Did you feel like you could see yourself maybe embodied in any of these characters, or you were really rooting for them?
Well, I was rooting for the punk band the whole time. You know, obviously, I guess if I had to gravitate towards anyone, I thought Brees was definitely the strongest and the smartest out of all of them, and the girl from Arrested Development was definitely the most savvy. So I guess those were the two. Like, Anton was really, I thought he was going to be one of the first ones to go, because he was, you know, mangled to start with when they made their escape. So congrats for him for, you know, being the end girl boy. It amazes me how quickly Tiger and Brees died, considering how much, you know, we got to know their individual characters. And again, when you talk about subverting expectations, when they make that rush outside, you thought they would go to, like, you know, level 2 Nazis, you know, and then there's like, you know, they beat the underlings, now it's like the boss with the crowbar. But no, they get attacked by dogs, because guess what? In real life, Nazis wouldn't play fair. So the dogs rip these guys' throats out. The iconic Patrick Stewart line, oh, he's still breathing? That's good. That's a, you know, longer time of death, so we can stage this. So, again, obviously I was rooting for everyone. I don't think this band was necessarily, like, good guys, but compared to Nazis, they're definitely protagonists. So, but as far as, like, relating to anyone, I think they did a really good job in, especially when they start dropping like flies, you really learn not to get attached to any certain character, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I really liked Brees, because he had the, you know, the karate skills. And I really liked the girl from Arrested Development just because she was swarmy and... Brees? Oh,
Reese.
Uh,
I'm sorry. No B. Just
Oh,
take the B
Reese.
out.
Like
Take
recess.
the B. Lose the B.
A lot of names in here, so...
I was rooting, when it got down to the final two, when it was just those two, and we were getting down to the final, like, let's go moment with the face paint and the monologue, I was actively rooting for them at one point. I even wrote down my notes, like, they've got me rooting like it was... You know, the fourth quarter, third period, we're ready to rock and roll. Like, that was definitely it was one of those things where, for me, it's not my kind of film. It really isn't. And I'll get to this when I get to my review. But I was kind of doing one of these where I was watching through my fingers. I was just like, oh, what do you know? It was just so good, fucking good.
Cole, weigh in on that, but also tell me, how scary are dogs?
I mean, like, dogs that are trained, like fighting dogs, are absolutely terrifying. And I think they, like, made a good depiction of that. And also, you know, in a situation like that where you're not planning to fight a dog, it's very, like, I don't know how I would react if I come out and I'm expecting a bunch of Nazis with machetes and, you know, a bunch of, you know, big-ass pit bulls and stuff fucking start coming at me. I don't know what I'm going to do in those situations. Hop up on a counter, I guess. But one thing I really loved about this film that we were talking about is just how fragile humanity is, or just people in general, and how quickly all these people start dying. And, like, Reese, who is, like, the big badass who took down Big John or Big Justin and, like, snapped his arm and fucking, you know, put him in a chokehold and took down that guy, like, basically single-handedly, and was all amped up, and you're like, this guy's about to be like an action hero, right? Like a superhero. He's about to go out, and he hops out a window, and immediately, as soon as he hops out, there's just Nazis just waiting there, and they just fucking stab him in the back, and now you're done. Like, game over. It just doesn't matter how strong or how good of a fighter you are or anything like that. One wrong move, and someone stabs you in the back, and it's over. So I thought they did a really good job with that aspect.
So again, talking about the characters, I do love this about it, because in a traditional like thriller or horror movie, people would get like better at things. Like when you go onto the next escape room, they're like, "Aha, I learned something." But it seems like both sides were like progressively getting dumber, which I feel like as desperation sits in for both sides, like that feels like very, very real and cool. Like when they bust out the front door, they give the shotgun to Arrested Development girl, who's, one who didn't want the gun when they had it in the room, the pistol. And number two, like, she's obviously weaker than Anton. So, like, what was the, like, thought process? Like, we're going to bust out the front door and we're going to have a girl, like, just shoot at the ground because, she's kind of,
I mean, Anton
weak.
had a fucked up arm at that point. Yeah.
I guess, okay, yeah, okay, you know what, I guess that makes sense. But yeah, I just love that, like, these characters were human on both sides. Like, I like how there was no, like, aha moment, like, here's the key to the back door, it's all like, let's do something really stupid because I did this paintballing once,
I actually know exactly what you would do in situations with dogs. I'm a mail carrier, and I've been trained on this. So what you do is put something in front of you so that the dogs usually will attack whatever's in front of them. And so if you have a mailbag handy, which of course everybody does, you put a mailbag in front of you and then they bite the mailbag, and that's when you're able to attack the dog because they will just be munching down on the mailbag or whatever you put in front of them. Because dogs, yeah, that's what they're trained to do. They will run after something and they will bite whatever is just in their path. So...
But what if that dog breaks Darby Milton's lunch pail?
Then
fuck. Derby Milton.
Yeah. Call back.
Deep cut bank.
Yeah, Cut Bank. For those listeners who are curious, go watch Cut Bank.
Cut bank.
That deserves a cough.
Deep Cut Bank. Yeah, that was good. Nice job.
Wow. So, unlike the pacing of this movie, I am going to rush to the ending. And we have, at this point, Pat and Amber that are left. They get a pep talk, they get some face paint, 2 lackeys are sent after them, which they do get the upper hand on. And then we're finally outside of the green room. We move on to see what Patrick Stewart is setting up as a trespassing for all of these bodies of the witnesses that have been killed. And he's ready to just, like, tie a little bow on this story and tell the cops what needs to be told to just put this all behind them. Who would like to weigh in first kind of on the final act of this movie, the escape, and, again, subversion of expectations and authenticity, all the themes. Kevin, let's go with you.
So no one wants to go first, but I will go ahead. I will go ahead and do it. So as you alluded to, once they escape the green room, we have even more tension in the sense that even though our Nazis have left, there could be anything around the corner. They don't give us the sense of them escaping means safety. And then we get the unique choice when they do hear a single gunshot in the woods where Pat decides to, for whatever reason, head towards the guns. And I think it's described later as he wants to mess up the crime scene, or I don't know if he wants to see if some of his friends are still alive. I think that's kind of what they were going for, but either way, he decides to kind of go to the crime scene, and it all happens just so super fast, with all of the reactions, all of the people that get shot for the various reasons, and our final scene, spoilers, we've been talking about this the whole time, but Sir Patrick Stewart's character has been planning everything so meticulously up until this point where he's left with no other plans and nothing else to do, so he just turns around and walks away and hopes that it works out, and it doesn't work out, clearly, but it was brilliant, and the final line, I know we'll probably get to it, right? We haven't really touched on the Island song, and that'll probably be a good thing, but It was just snarky and brilliant, and I just really enjoyed the way that they pulled it all together with the chaos versus the order and the serenity of the forest versus the just massive scene of death. I mean, his best friends, his entire band is laying dead in front of him, and he just had to murder somebody, and all of the life that comes into his character. And it's, absolutely kind of chilling to think that this was, Anton Yelchin's last performance before he untimely passed. It was released in April of 2016, and he passed in June of 2016. And you really just, not that it matters that this is the final performance, but he just did such a great job as the main character and really gave it an all for a movie that didn't make a lot of money, for a movie that was underbilled in an indie art house film for the most part. He absolutely gave a performance that made me believe in everything. So for the ending, that's what I want to bring into it, and it was just well acted. And we'll touch on it too, but that final scene with the dog, with the dog running down the road and putting his head on the arm of his dead master, was soul wrenching, because it's not the dog's fault, right? It's the human's fault, but the dog still is loyal, even to a fault, even to a Nazi. So people, love your dogs. They're wonderful, and we don't deserve them.
Yep, I was going to touch on and kind of ask that question about the emphasis of the dog, like why even include that in this movie, but you kind of already weighed in on that question. So I'm going to get everyone's thoughts kind of on this ending when we're outside the green room. Then we're going to go on to, I'll ask about your deserted island bands, and then we'll get into ratings and very final thoughts. Cole, you're next.
I really liked the ending because I also hated it in terms of, like, the whole time, I was hoping for this, like, a revenge thing. And in a way, yeah, they got it, but you don't feel like they really got anything, right? They just survived. All the bad guys, for the most part, died. They killed Patrick Stewart, which when that like shootout, I thought was like a very realistic depiction of something that would happen. And I feel like the ending was also a realistic depiction of two survivors that survived something terrible that happened to them. They lost their friends. Yeah, they killed the guys that did it, but in reality, are you gonna feel like you're fucking like on top of the world? No, fucking life's like, it fucking sucks. Your friends are dead. The people, you just went through an absolute nightmare, and you just feel like shit, and you just kind of like sit there shell shocked like they did at the end. And I felt like when it first happened, I really wanted that cathartic release of those people getting what they deserve, but at the same token, I'm glad that they didn't, because of the way that this film was portrayed and done as almost like a realistic depiction. I felt, I didn't like it, but I appreciated it.
And Eric?
See, I think this film is hard. The ending is really hard for me to have, like, I'm very split on my feelings about it, because at one point, you kind of feel like this is a horror film, where I feel like in horror films, a lot of them, especially like films with high body counts, you're not supposed to get too connected to any of the characters. And I definitely, we got connected to the whole band here. We got connected to a lot of the main characters. And when they died, you felt like a loss. You did feel like you lost a character you knew. And the end, yeah, there's not really a major catharsis, and in a lot of horror films, there doesn't exactly need, unless it's elevated horror like we were talking about with The Witch, a lot of horror films, there doesn't exactly need to be a catharsis. But that's where, to me, I felt like this was a drama and like a thriller where I did get connected to these characters, and I wanted there to be some kind of catharsis and some kind of final thought on what they all just went through, and also on maybe American subculture, like the whole punk rock scene and also the levels of it. Like skinheads were a part of the punk rock scene really big time in the 70s, but so were the Dead Kennedys and like communists and socialists. There was, I don't know, American subculture was a big theme of this film. And then in the end, it just kind of turned into like this thriller where, I don't know, it entertained me the whole time. I had no major catharsis, but boy, did it entertain the hell out of me. And so that's where I feel very split, where I think I liked it a lot, but is that going to, move it up to one of the best A24 films I've seen of all time or anything? I don't think so. And I'll give my rating later to further expand on that. But, yeah, that's kind of where the ending left me.
Yeah, I liked when just the scene change from this room, this green room, that is a bit claustrophobic. You feel very trapped. They return to it again and again and again. It's nighttime. You can feel the nighttime. You can feel the baddies. And then it opens up and it's green outside, but it's big and it's empty. Not empty, but there's possibilities. And I like the realism of that shootout that we kind of touched on, where there's so many times when I watch a movie and people have guns and you clearly have a bad guy in front of you and then they talk for too long. This one did not do that for me, which I appreciated. So I quite liked that, but I also found the face paint and the war tactics between these two characters by the end got a little cheeseball. And we're talking like this could be a very real thing, and I don't know if I really appreciated that as much for the ending. And I didn't like our final thoughts from our main character, just like, I thought of my deserted island band. Tell someone who cares. It's like, that's okay. That's what we're gonna end on. All right. So for me, ending, fine, whatever. I like the walk away that Kevin kind of touched on from the big leader. Like, everything's taken care of. Something will happen to these guys. If either way, I'm not going to give them the dignity of seeing my face if I do get shot, if they have the courage. So I liked that choice as well. Speaking of deserted island bands, this is something that's asked at the beginning of the movie, and like I said, is asked at the end. I'm going to throw it right back to Eric, and you are on a deserted island. What's the one band that you have?
So, since I had a day to think about this from when I watched it, I definitely thought about it way more than any of these characters did. And I'm like, okay, what's a band I'd like to listen to on a deserted island that has a large discography and also a range of songs that, like, I get a lot of different sounds and song textures in a way that I can constantly enjoy for the rest of my life. I'm going to go with LCD Sound System. I can dance and party with LCD Sound System, but then they also have like kind of more house music kind of songs and songs that make me think. They also are really good at covering songs too. And so if I wanted to kind of get more in my feelings, I think they could do that for me too. So I'm going to go with LCD Sound System.
Yeah, what I like about this question is it's not like about the impression that you want to give to somebody, like, my favorite band is this because of the cool factor. It's like, legitimately to me and only me, this is important. So good answer, Eric. Blaze, you're next.
Oh boy. So I'm so glad Kevin even brought this up this afternoon in our group chat, because I wasn't thinking, like, the obvious, like, question I wasn't thinking of. So I've thought about it a lot. That's mostly what I've been thinking about since I got off of work. And my love of music is constantly evolving. I feel like who I was even 2 years ago, I listened to completely different music than I do now, and I love that about myself. But when it comes to this desert island, like, who's the one guy that's had my back my entire life since I started listening to him? And so I got to thinking, and I was like, Billy Joel, Scenes from an Italian Restaurant. I always can go back to that. It's a nice, safe, I love that album so much. He's the greatest person to ever come out of Long Island. So if there's some sand on Long Island, that's the desert island I want to be on, baby.
I was really expecting you to say Machine Gun Kelly.
No. That's a good one. That's a very good one. Kevin, you're next.
All right. So for me, I thought this question was going to be a lot harder than it turned out to be. Honestly, I started thinking, I'm like, man, there's so much out there. How can I decide? And then I looked at my leg, and I realized that I have a tattoo of 3 dancing skeletons on it, and the answer very much is clear for me that the Grateful Dead will be my desert island band. For so many reasons other than the obvious that they're just, the Grateful Dead. Their discography, like Garrett talked about, is massive and wide-ranging. They played from the 60s into the 90s. Jerry Garcia is a god among so many people. They play blues, they play jam music, they play psychedelic rock, they play everything in between. Their ability to jam on riffs and live concerts and everything under the sun. And then, of course, everything that Jerry meant to the music industry in general. So, Grateful Dead is my quick and easy answer. I love them for life. So,
Fair. Cole, you or me next? You pick.
I'll go. You're the host, so we'll save the best for last. But, if we go by like just sheer volume and discography. I mean, you really got to go with Weird Al Yankovic, right?
Someone should tag him in the reel we will inevitably make of this quote, because that's awesome.
But if we're
That's how
going
you get off the island really fast, I guess.
We're gonna vote you off the island.
if we're going off of like my music taste, and especially in the last few years, a band that I don't know, so a lot of people don't seem to know about, but I really really like them is Barnes Courtney. I'm a really big fan of them. I like their music a lot. They're I don't know, they don't have the biggest discography, but I really enjoy their music a lot.
It's just
Fair enough. I'm not familiar myself.
Yeah, Barnes Courtney.
Okay, separate, not Courtney Barnett. Barnes Courtney.
Nope.
Okay.
Barnes Courtney.
Okay.
99 is an amazing song. Look it up. Definitely worth the recommendation. Side note, I think that Pat's desert song or desert artist is the Dead Kennedys. That was my theory after he came up with the Nazi punks and all that stuff. I thought he was probably a Dead Kennedy guy. That's just my thoughts.
I think, the movie ends with, what, Creedence
CCR.
Clearwater Revival?
Yeah.
So
That's
I
the
kind of thought
easy
it might be
one.
that, because that's more
That's the easy one.
that's more shameful if you're a punky guy to not admit it.
But then in the end, Sam, she just says, Simon and Garfunkel, and somebody else says
Garfunkel.
Prince. It's like,
Yeah.
deep down, we love our pop music still, you know?
And then when it was Madonna or
Slayer.
Or Slayer,
yeah.
yep.
Okay, kind of in that wheelhouse. I feel like, for me, it's like Gut Reaction has to be kind of the one. So my desert island band is one that I don't tell people I like anymore, but meant a lot to me, and that's Fall Out Boy. There are many albums, well, there's 2 to 3 that were, amazing, perfect, and then there's, 2 to 3 that I don't so much love, and even one that I've never listened to because I got so mad at them, but it's all the original band members, so if I was on an island, I guess I'd finally have to give it a listen. They've put out a single recently, they're getting back to their roots with putting a new flavor on it, so as much as I'd love to name a cooler band or show off how much metal music I like, I have to say at the end of the day it's going to be Fall Out Boy. Almost Lady Gaga, but it's Fall Out Boy.
It's got to be the band that
Stick
you
to
would be
your
okay being stuck with, on the desert island and listening to them constantly for the rest of your life, and
never having anything else. Yeah.
I could do it. Yeah, I know it in my gut.
they could probably cover
Cole's got
some
Weird
good
Al.
stuff too. Yeah.
Weird Al is funny. I like the idea of picking a band that would motivate you to leave the island. That's a good strategy too.
Give me the complete works of Enya, please. This is good.
All right. If you've been a listener to our show, at the end of this, we all give our individual ratings on a letter grade, with A24 being an A, all the way down to F, including E's. So, with that said, it's time for us to give kind of our final thoughts and our ratings. So, do I have a volunteer?
I'll go first. Sure. So what I was talking about earlier with kind of the dichotomy of this movie between a horror thriller or a drama thriller, it's hard to distinguish between the two and judge it accordingly. But at the same time, all the things that I love judging movies by: cinematography, acting, writing, and music, and the texture of the film, as they would say. It massively succeeded in all those things up until the ending, when it kind of fell flat on the catharsis. And if I think what the director, this is where the death of the author, I'm going to try to guess the intention of the director, which I maybe shouldn't do, but the intention of the director, I think, was to create more of a horror thriller kind of film. And, I think he succeeded on that very well. And the kind of, would you say the ending is almost nihilistic? And if it was nihilistic, is that maybe the whole idea or kind of catharsis of the film, is we live in a very nihilistic world? Maybe?
That'd be very punk. That'd be very
exactly.
punk.
And just saying, I don't give a shit, that's very nihilist, and we're nihilists, Mr. Lebowski. We we believe in nothing,
We believe
And
in
so
nothing.
because of that, I'm actually going to say maybe I did come away. It wasn't a very illuminating catharsis, but a catharsis that maybe I'm okay with. So I'm going to give this film A minus. A minus 24 for me.
Very good. Blaze, you are next.
Okay, so if this had been my first time watching this film, I would be completely on board with Eric, and I kind of get his catharsis of the catharsis. But at the same time, and I know this director, like, he really loves punk rock, he really loves horror, and he really loves thrillers, and I think he really hates Nazis. So I think, I think that's a great stand-up person, just to start off with. I thought the cinematography was very good. Again, to go back to another movie we reviewed, Drop the Green, Just the Room, for a film that just takes place in, like, one location. Thank you, Cole. I think they did a really good job of making me not feel bored. And that's very hard for even, the standard thriller or the standard horror film to do. So they check a lot of boxes off for me, but still at the end, I really wanted it to be that, that revenge. I wanted Patrick Stewart to feel the pain that he inflicted upon Anton. I wanted Chekhov to get his revenge on Picard, and it never really, panned out. And my other, I guess, I wouldn't call it an issue because I'm personally for it, because I'm a degenerate. I love sick, twisted shit. I think that the gore is amazing, and I think the gore is really well put. But this is also not your grandma's film, so you can't really recommend it to everyone that you know. Since this is my second time watching it, and I can really critically, delve into it, it's gonna be more... It's going to be more of a B24 for me, and that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It doesn't mean that it's the greatest A24 movie of all time, but it fits really nice into a niche of, if this is your type of movie, this is probably going to blow your freaking mind. If it's not, you're probably really going to hate it. Not that I think Kevin would hate it, but I wouldn't recommend this movie to Kevin knowing how he feels about blood, gore, and horror. So, with that being said, it's going to be a B24. Good movie, not great.
I'm going to sandwich myself in the middle here since I went last on the Island Bands. So, for me, I really like this movie. I'll say that. And I don't even know what all I want to touch on. As your humble narrator, I didn't write down all of my pros and cons as I usually do, so we're going off. I think that our characters, we kind of touched on how they are introduced to us with a lot of show, not tell. And I think on previous episodes, I've told you guys in a movie, I think that's very important. And that does a lot for me. I think that the use of empathy is really clear right away for these kind of characters. Even what we're calling our middle manager skinhead, there's some empathy for him there too. I think that that's really impressively done with what we're given, and I think that their writing in this movie is extremely, extremely strong, down to the smallest details and just some really quotable moments. I think that even with the violence, the suspense, and the thriller aspect, there's this humor in it as well, and I don't know if that's caught by everyone, but it's something that I appreciate up until the end, and then it's just a little too obvious. So that part is a great thing. I think it's a beautiful movie. The cinematography is just stunning, and I've used this word before, but it's velvety, it's tactile, and then it's gritty, and it's grimy, and you can feel this movie. And we've talked about the juxtaposition of the fast-paced, what I thought the whole movie would be, just super punky kind of way of clipping this whole movie together. And then the opposite is shown as well. So it makes the intense parts feel that much more powerful. I think where this movie lacks for me is in the ending. I think that leading up to the ending, and even by the time that our two survivors are in the basement doing their whole way of outsmarting those last two lackeys, for me, at that point, I'm starting to get a little bit tired. And that might just be a me problem. So I think that the front half of this movie is one of the greatest things I've ever seen, and I think the back half is just a good movie. So the last thing that I want to touch on is something that we've kind of been talking about too, which was the authenticity and also just like the intensity of being a punk and being in that kind of world is so shown through this medium. So our writer-director, I think I would love to see a lot more work from him. Like, I thought that this was really, really good. So all these thoughts put together in the way that I am, because it didn't pull me through the entire movie with that really high standard that was set, B plus 24 from me. Cole, you're next.
Okay. So you guys touched on a lot of the good aspects, cinematography, the acting, the general vibes that this movie pulls off, and the really grounded approach to a like horror scenario that is one that you can really see happening and how it unfolds and all that stuff. I thought they did a phenomenal job with all of that. Also, Big Justin is a man after my own heart, where he goes through and explains to them that they're not bullets, they're cartridges. There's not 6 bullets. There's actually 5 because it's a Taurus revolver.
He also said he was going to butt fuck all of them too, though.
Yeah, so like
man after Cole's own heart.
But
No, he just heard.
All right.
He just heard Reese wrong. That's all.
yeah. But no, I love that aspect of it. It really warmed my heart when he just corrected them on improper terms. Seeing Patrick Stewart as like a bad dude was awesome. Like really, really happy to see that. There was 9 dead Nazis in this film. Most dead Nazis in any A24 film that we've seen to date. So that's a big plus.
That's a plus.
That gets a whole letter grade.
Yeah.
Right
my favorite color is green, so big ups for that. However, not a green room. I was very confused as to why it was called that. Later Googled it, found out I'm just a dummy when it comes to other things, and green room is referred to the room behind stages. So, did not know that. No idea. I was like, the whole entire time I'm like, when's this fucking green room? I thought when they broke into the basement, that was going to be like this weird room that was all fucking green.
It's gonna be magically green.
No, yeah, I never was in a band, never did
so
music,
funny.
never did musicals.
That's awesome.
None of that stuff, so fuck it, never do any of that. So that's something that I learned, and am better for it. So really moving forward. All in all, I love this movie. I thought it was very good. A little issue that I had, which was there was just a landline in the room at one point. So when they were talking about the phone and stuff, it's at towards the beginning when they have Big Justin all tied up. Amber's just talking, and they're literally talking about not having a phone, and there's just a landline sitting next to her. So little could have fixed that, but otherwise love this movie. It's like the vibes, the feeling, everything was phenomenal. I'm gonna give it a B plus. Can't quite give it an A, but man, oh man, I like this movie a lot.
Thank you. And thank you for your bravery to admit that you didn't know what a green room was to start, but now you'll never forget.
Yeah, apparently everyone else knew, so I was kind of hoping I would have some support. Instead, I got some laughs, which we'll move
fine.
on.
It's almost the same thing.
Your ass just got clipped, boy.
All right, Kevin, wrap it up.
All right, wonderful. So you all did an eloquent job of kind of giving all the wonderful pros and cons of this film, so I don't think I have too much to touch on. But as Blaze pointed out, I am not overly a fan of the horror genre in general. Thrillers and chase movies and the typical slasher trope is just not my bag. So going into this, and I knew that it was going to be intense with a bunch of gore and drama and all that jazz, I was like, oh man, I'm going to need a movie buddy to watch this guy. But I soldiered on and I watched it on myself, and I think I'm better for it. As I kind of continue this A24 project, and I'll get to the movie here in a short minute, but it's really cool to get to new things that I haven't dealt with or seen before. And this movie subverted my expectation completely. I thought it was going in to be this slasher hacker, and it came out to be a lot more smart, more of an intentional passion project on that subculture that we touched on, the punk scene in general, and kind of just a cool character story that we get. I won't go too much farther on the cinematography other than it was beautiful. The high-ranging shots with the overarching trees versus all of the dinginess of the actual club itself was just brilliant. Kelly, you had talked about quotable moments there, and there was one line that I pulled out that I want to touch on here, and it's from our karate drummer, and he basically says, well, we won't all live, but maybe we won't all die. And through the movie, I kind of thought that was the way they were going to go. They were going to knock off a whole bunch of them, but at the end we were going to have at least somebody standing tall. And I liked that they gave me a reason to care about those people as they were going towards the end. For a movie that deals with boots and braces as a right-wing subject matter, they did a really good job of not being political with their subject matter and just allowed the viewer to kind of see for itself. And I thought that was brilliant in general. The scenery was well done. The acting was well done. Everything about this just was higher than what I was expecting, which is great. The only downsides, which I will have to go into a little bit, is I thought the choice to have Patrick Stewart on the other side of a door for the majority of his monologue kind of took away from some of those points for me. It was a little more muffled than I would have liked, some kind of the clarity on the negotiations. And then just kind of, just maybe, the gore in general was fine, but maybe just a little bit less. That's just my personal taste. So in the end, it gets a B+ for me. It was very good, but it wasn't the best thing I've ever seen, and it's still in that genre that I don't particularly like, so it gets a B+ for that anyway. But Sir Patrick Stewart was fantastic, and I will recommend it to people because I think they need to see it in general for many different reasons, but it's a very good movie. So listeners, go watch The Green Room. It was great.
And thank you, everybody, for listening and tuning into our show. If you like what you hear, and I hope you did, please review us and rate us highly on things, and we will thank you ourselves personally. We will come to your door if you so request it.
Yep. I mean,
So-
not in a creepy way, but...
Yeah. Nazi punks, fuck off.
Fuck off, Nazi punks!
Fuck you, Nazi punks!